Oh, what? How did you... Where the fuck did you go? Shira rushed to me and asked the same thing. Meanwhile, I looked at the 6 pairs of eyes, focusing their most intense gazes on mine. On the floor, Naomi still lay in her own blood. I don't know. What exactly are you asking me? Just a minute ago, you were looking inside that cabinet. How did you make it out of the room? Just a minute ago? Were they messing with me? There was no way Shira would... You mean to say that I disappeared from in front of the cabinet? Atsuki, don't fuck around. We don't mean to say that you disappeared. We're asking you how you did it. I didn't do anything. I touched the Sekimeiya and instantly appeared in hallway A. Excuse me? We were talking about how you were the true culprit of this murder. You clearly did something to shift our focus. Wait a second though. What's in this cabinet is not the Sekimeiya. Huh? I'm certain it was. I touched it and felt the burn on my fingers. Not the one we saw earlier, at least. Look. He put his right arm inside the cabinet and removed it, holding an object that looked very similar to the Sekimeiya. Yeah, that's the only thing that was inside. I have no idea how you made it to the hallway. There's nothing else in the cabinet. My eyes were still directed at the Sekimeiya in Sai's hand. It no longer glowed at all, and it was grey. I'm telling the truth. What I found in the cabinet looked like the Sekimeiya we'd seen. I saw it glowing in the dark. I had to explain myself however I could, but I had no concept of what had happened. But this thing doesn't glow. Kate says he doesn't know what it is, even though that means nothing. I'm saying what I know. The Sekimeiya was never here. Atsuki, let me try to understand what you're saying. You mean that when you touched that thing, you teleported outside? That's what it felt like. Everyone looked skeptical, but they remained quiet. You weren't here by that point yet, though. When I found myself in the lobby, I entered this room and only saw Naomi's body on the floor. I went up to the 6th floor to find you and eventually went back down. That's when I just found you here. I felt strangely uncomfortable while I attempted to explain myself. I sounded crazy, and if I wasn't, they were the ones tricking me. The only explanation was that I'd been knocked out in some way and they were acting as if it had just happened seconds ago. Isla, still between Erina's arms, looked the least dubious of me, but she still seemed to be trying to process that her friend's prediction hadn't come true. So, you want to make us believe that you traveled to the past. That's impressive. To the past, right. That was the conclusion to draw from what I'd said. Not only teleportation, but time travel too. It was a ridiculous claim, even if they'd really seen me disappear. Are you hearing him? I bet you all thought he was innocent before seeing his true colors. You can't honestly tell me you believe a word of what he's saying. Then how do you think he escaped from this room? I saw him vanish with my own eyes, and I believe you all did. You said there's no hidden paths in these rooms. Tell us, Atsuki, how did you do it? There is a security camera here, so your trick has been recorded. Will you claim ignorance and state that you traveled to the past? Yes. Did I travel to the past? I couldn't have. That's impossible. Even if such a thing were possible, would everything hold up? I have no idea what caused it, but if the others didn't knock me out, I must have teleported in some way. I guess traveling to the past only adds a bit more impossibility to that. At least one thing would begin to make sense if that's what happened. Earlier when I glanced at this room, Naomi was already dead. Didn't Kate say this, that I was on this floor during the time Naomi died? Though normal means I wouldn't have been able to be on the crystal floor, I was upstairs and I would have been noticed if I'd headed down. This would make it possible. Oh, through normal means, not though normal means. It would be absurd to immediately justify Kate's accusation like this, but it would explain why he decided to make such a nonsensical claim in the first place, and would make a lot of what he said believable. I'd seen it countless times, time travel appearing out of nowhere to construct crazy events. I'd experienced many stories that were ruined by such an exploitable mechanic. Thinking about it, I felt as if the same thing was happening to my reasoning. If I couldn't explain my own experience, did I have to assume that time traveling was possible? Had it been a factor the whole time? I thought about the full sequence of events up until that point. If they were somehow related to time travel, how are we supposed to think about that? What would be more reasonable? To deny its existence and ignore my unexplained experience, or to think that it could be possible? I felt no enthusiasm thinking about either option, so I thought back on the previous few minutes. How would this even work? Whenever time travel comes up, the word paradox is usually thrown all around. Depending on its rules, the way time travel works can greatly differ. One simple type of paradox is the famous going back to the past and preventing your birth. Would you instantly disappear, or would you live a life in a world where you never existed? Either way, the past was changed. On the other side is the bootstrap paradox. You find a key, open a door with it, find a time travel machine inside, use it to go back to the past, and finally place the key on the floor so that your past self can find it. In that case, did time travel matter at all? The past was not changed, so by traveling back you only understood how it all came to happen. Essentially, it's a loop without a starting point, and it only occurred because it occurred. That's a concept far from sensible. It could come in handy to justify grand motives in a story, but it's nothing short of completely impractical. However, no matter how I feel, I think that everything points to this direction. That if I have just traveled to the past, I haven't actually changed anything. It seems like I just re-experienced the events I had previously lived. The starting point seems to have been making physical contact with the Sekimeiya. As nothing that I did once I arrived in the past directly led to my travel, I'm not sure I'd quite perceive it as that kind of paradox. Looking ahead though, it seems that I unconsciously repeated the past I had lived with Shiria. Just a minute ago you were looking inside that cabinet. According to this, I can draw that I supposedly went back about 20 minutes to the past. That's the time I estimate I spent confusedly looking around for people. By that point, Naomi had already been killed. Shortly after, I took the elevator that was on this floor up to the 6th. This clearly holds up with what we experienced. At that point, the elevator was on the crystal floor, as it had probably arrived there when we'd heard it on the 5th. Then when I went up to the 6th, would be when Shira and I hurriedly followed it up. What the hell is this? Did I, without being aware of it, replicate the past I'd experienced? I think that something curious happened when we chased the elevator up. The elevator hadn't been empty. We had to assume that whoever had gone up had entered the attic. The only other explanation was that the person inside had vanished. But it seems that what I just went through explains what actually occurred. I got out of the elevator and looked through the 6th floor. The corridor appeared empty and I spent a bit of time inside the partitions. As I was there, Shira and another version of myself were chasing me. They called the elevator to the 5th floor, but as I saw earlier, that wouldn't have made a noticeable sound from where I was. Then, as I remember, the previous me stayed next to the elevator while Shira looked through the 2 main parts of the floor. She also mentioned how she'd first looked through the opposite corridor. She and I saw each other when I was about to continue looking for people. She was about to look through the partitions. That's why she reacted the way she did. From her perspective, I should have been next to the elevator, but where she found me, my job still would have worked. From there, you could still prevent anyone from escaping, so she thought I'd moved from next to the elevator to outside the partitions. So to her, it appeared as if the floor had been empty. She didn't realize that she'd actually seen the person who brought the elevator up. "Oh, you're here, I found something." That was her reaction when she thought I'd slightly moved. Similarly, when she was done investigating, something she said did throw me off for a little. "But look, this is what I wanted to show you." She was referencing what she told me just a few seconds prior, unaware that she wasn't talking to the same person. Ooh. When she reacted coldly to my presence and said she'd found something in the corridor, I thought I had to look at it, so I went to check. During that time, she confirmed that the partitions were empty. I didn't see anything of importance in the corridor because what she had found was the attic door itself. I entered the partitions to demand a further explanation, but she was already talking to the previous me next to the elevator. When I left, the 2 of them had gone around to inspect the door they'd just discovered. And later, I spent a few minutes inside the partitions of the 5th floor, so I didn't notice Akuro going up or the 3 of us going down. After a while, I continued looking through every floor until I reached the point I'd traveled from. Even though I couldn't easily accept such a concept, it neatly explained many things. Was it all a ridiculous coincidence? A trick maybe? What I don't understand here... Wait, what button's the map again? Let me just click on that. So, sure, all of this happened on a sick floor. That is fine. I get how, you know, ridiculous coincidence, whatever. They missed each other on this floor. But Atsuki, like, you know, present Atsuki, then went down to the 5th floor and spent time in one of the partitions. Why didn't Shiria and past Atsuki notice him in those partitions? Because I'm pretty sure they went to check those. That's the part that's not quite clear to me. Even though I couldn't easily accept such a concept, it neatly explained many things. Was it all a ridiculous coincidence? A trick, maybe? Do you intend to answer? I'd kept quiet for a few seconds. Once I'd thought of the possibility, answers had quickly fallen into place. Something so outlandish certainly sounded impossible under any normal circumstances, but the simple fact was that it had happened to me. Unless there was another explanation I was missing, I had no choice but to accept it. I don't have a reason to deny that traveling to the past seems to be the most likely answer. Rather, it's the only one. Pathetic. You are accusing me of being a bad liar, Sai. If that was truly what had happened, it also meant that Kate had to be the killer. The elevator going up had been my doing, so there'd be nobody else on the 1st floor. Nobody had gone to the attic. But a line of reasoning that time traveling closed was another one that had opened. That was the can of worms that thinking about possibilities involving time travel opened. After all, I had randomly teleported to hallway A. Someone could have been on the same floor, killed Naomi before we'd thoroughly investigated it, and then traveled through time to an entirely different place. There was still one thing to keep in mind. The first time the elevator had gone down. It was possible someone had been in the attic before we'd heard it. They could have gone down with the elevator, killed Naomi, and then traveled to the past back inside the attic. Thinking about tight possibilities with such uncertain and volatile mechanics was impossible. So, according to you, his claim is as bad as or worse than yours, but yours were all easily disproven. Can you give an alternative to what Atsuki is saying? Do you intend to say that because I don't know how he made it out he must have time traveled? For the love of God, Sai, and you were trying to act smart. Well, let me tell you something. If Atsuki didn't time travel, he can't be Naomi's killer. If he did though, it's still an option. Sai and Shira had realized the same thing. I'd really been there by the time she had died. Okay, it might happen to explain that Kate saw Atsuki here, but it doesn't make it any less insane. Why not? I think it makes sense. What? Don't be silly. We can't use time travel to explain anything. Why not? POV of the developers trying to come up with a plot for the game. I'd say that's a fair question. By the way, it seems Kate was right about something. The Sekime appears to have broken, right? We were all shocked by that question, but we quickly understood what he'd meant. It had changed colors to a much less pleasant grey. See, this is all because it was removed from the cabinet. Are you sure? It was still white when I saw it. Go ahead and prove that. Did you put it there and just want to avoid facing the consequences? Shut up. God, this is what Atsuki asked about earlier. It's a function to regulate the cabinet's temperature, is it not? Yes, but it's set to room temperature. It's slightly damaged though. And let's think, out of all of us, who would hide the Sekimeiya in a place that has a cold temperature function? Even when I'm proven innocent, you still insist on suspecting me. This guy was scared out of his mind at his bosses, remember? He would be dumb enough to hide the Sekimeiya here after he told us that story. Do I have to repeat it? The cold function wasn't activated. Who cares about that? It was still hidden here of all places. You'd also be the only one to know about the function of the cabinets, right? Oh, what? Didn't Atsuki notice it too? That's why he appeared intrigued by this cabinet while he was being accused, acting as if he'd found the Sekimeiya he had hidden. I bet he hid it here to frame me after I explained the cold rule. That's not at all what happened, and the cameras will eventually prove it. I'm sure they will. But now let's hurry up and put this thing where it belongs, just in case it's not too late. Yeah, sure, we can try that. Holding the Sekimeiya in his hands, Sai closed the cabinet, which made a metallic sound as if it had locked automatically. Then he left the room, followed by Kate. Shiria was still unsure of what to say, and Akuro and Erina kept looking at me with uncertainty. We were in front of the event room. I squeezed my eyes shut and rubbed at the bridge of my nose, remembering that someone in the building had actually died. Things were moving too fast. A death moving through time after touching a gem, but it would have been even more dangerous to stop thinking. Before I entered the room, I realized that something else went against the theory that Kate hadn't killed Naomi. Sai was holding the Sekimeiya with his hands. However, I recalled feeling a painful burn on my fingers during the split second before I disappeared from the room. At that moment, the Sekimeiya had been glowing white, so if that was still the same object, it meant it had changed colors as soon as I traveled. In other words, it had powered off. So if anyone had consciously vanished from the first floor after killing Naomi, it should have powered off just like it had when I'd been the one to travel. I couldn't know how it worked, but the fact that I'd seen it glowing might have indicated that nobody had traveled before me. In other words, that Kate was the only suspect, or it has two charges. In addition, the Sekimeiya had been inside a locked cabinet. To travel and leave it inside, the culprit must have had to shut themselves inside and then touch the Sekimeiya. There was another problem though. I didn't think about it until we'd all entered the room. Touching the Sekimeiya made me travel to the past. Ignoring how an item with such an obvious power could have made it to a place where it let us touch it, something directly contradicted its powers. Earlier, Isla had touched it inside its cabinet, and so had Shiria. Following that, Sai had even gotten it out of the cabinet while holding it with his hands, and none of them had teleported at all. Was I the difference? Since I hadn't touched it back then, I couldn't discern whether the differing factor had been the person to touch it, or something about the Sekimeiya itself. Maybe it wasn't actually powered off. It could be that Sai couldn't travel. It could also be that the Sekimeiya's teleporting function only works in a certain temperature range. It doesn't work when it's frozen. Can I touch it again? Of course, have it. He handed me the grey gemstone. I felt no burn and I remained where I was. However, I was able to appreciate the smooth surface of the Sekimeiya, which had definitely not disappeared with its beautiful white. You're putting on such a pathetic show. You should know that. You're beginning to get on my nerves. I know how crazy I sound, but if anyone's been putting on a pathetic show from the start, it's been you. He caught you. This is unbelievable. Put it in a cabinet already. I didn't want to argue further, so I opened the glass covering and placed it inside. The colder temperature became easily noticeable as I left it on top of the cushion. Then I closed it again and everyone remained staring at the mysterious source of the day's incident. What? Did it change back? It did? Yes, it's white. We all saw it firsthand. A couple seconds after I put the Sekimeiya in the cabinet, it regained its old white glow. That's interesting. The temperature brought it back. That's it then. We must not take it out of here until the front door opens. It's clear that will bring us a bunch of issues with Ashia. Kate, this thing made Atsuki travel through time. Can you shut up for a second about goddamn Ashia? You were right, the cold fixed it, so isn't it strange? According to your story from earlier, the original finder of the Sekimeiya realized the cold was needed. If this can send you to the past, they must have certainly touched and tried all sorts of things to keep it stable. Could they have not noticed its power? What power? Kid, this thing will not send you to the past. Something like that is impossible. Didn't we touch it earlier? Isla definitely held it and nothing happened to her. That's true. Why didn't it make me go anywhere? Because it's just a gemstone. Oh, it appears to have fixed itself. Shall we test it? I'm beginning to wonder if you process any of what I say. We're not taking this out of here again. Okay, sure thing. Sai's insincere reply left us with a few seconds of silence. Erina was the one to break it with a curious expression. Isn't that a lock? I tilted my head to look at where Erina was pointing. Under the keyhole on the left side of the cabinet, there was a small arrow directed to the word unlocked, with locked being right under it. That's just indicating the status of the cabinet, right? Let me see. With the finger, I rotated the dial. It didn't appear to move at first, but as soon as I applied a bit of pressure, it gave out and locked itself into place with a click. Did I lock it? Sai next to the class tried to scroll it down. I think so. I did hear a sound coming from here. I attempted to set it back to unlocked, but it was impossible. You must actually need the key for that. So we can lock it manually but not unlock it again. That's almost fair. Kate, you work here, right? Did you not know about this mechanism with how much you've insisted to keep the Sekimeiya inside?
I didn't. It seems changes were made to this cabinet as the others don't possess this function.
Well, congratulations, you did it. Now we'll have to keep it here for the remainder of the day. Ashia will be pleased. Since we'd evidently not looked through the cabinet well enough, I inspected it further. Shortly, I noticed something else. There's an outlet behind it, and the cabinet's connected to it. Well, I mean, the cold temperature's gotta come from somewhere, right?
Of course, it's needed for the temperature regulation. Every cabinet with that function has to be connected to a power supply.
It had already happened a few times, but once again, the immediate shock of hearing something we couldn't have heard infested the room. From outside, we all distinctly heard the sound of a door closing. That was a door, right? Shit, there's actually someone else here. We all hurried to open the right door, but we were stopped by Sai. What are you doing? Someone look at hallway A2. The staircase is there, so we can't all leave from here. Sai, Shiro, and Akuro exited through the right door since they'd been next to it. I'd been to the left of the cabinet, so I went with the others through the left door. As usual, hallway A appeared empty. We'd continuously done the same thing, but it seemed we had to search it one more time. Was it really possible a hidden culprit had remained unspotted for that long? The question had already come back. Looking through the whole tower had left me exhausted, so I moved to the lobby door to make sure nobody was there and to keep watching the hallway. The atmosphere continuously shifted in the span of a few seconds. After looking at the empty hallway C, Aaron and Isla entered every room together, while Kate checked through some others to speed up the process. My position guaranteed that nobody could come out of a room while the others were busy inspecting them. I sighed deeply. If nothing was found in either of the hallways, would we have to move upward once again and look through every floor? The door we'd heard couldn't have closed on its own. Surprisingly, the others were taking a while with every room, as they knew that they all contained cabinets with empty interiors big enough to fit a person. While I stared ahead, I realized that making such an obvious sound seemed to defy the persistent stealth of the culprit. About 10 minutes later, the search in our hallway concluded. I could hear that Isla, who was still holding up surprisingly well, had slowed them down, constantly asking to stay with the gems for longer. My group came to me and reported the result I'd already seen. The mechanical room still remained unchecked, so since I'd stayed put, I told them to make sure nobody appeared in the hallway while I went to inspect it myself. On the way, I looked at the few drawers the reception desk had, which were only filled with papers. Downstairs, I was reminded of the fact that such an off-putting place existed on that same floor. Being alone there was much different from the time I'd looked through it with Sai, and when I considered that I was searching for a hidden culprit that could easily catch me off guard, tension constricted my body once more. Fortunately, it wasn't a big space, so declaring it as empty was easy. I went back up to see my group where I'd left them, and I saw that the others were by the end of hallway B. I approached my group first. Erina told me that nothing had happened in hallway A, so we walked to C and regrouped. Nothing, huh? Yeah, the rooms were all empty. So if a person made the noise, they must be above us right now.
Someone watched your hallway to make sure it was always being observed, right?
Yes, I did. We also checked the bathrooms once we were done. Who remained outside in yours?
It was Atsuki.
Oh, my friend Atsuki, that's good. Did Kate look at any room all by himself?
I did. Are you implying that perhaps I ignored something on purpose?
Yep, stay here. Sorry for slowing the process down, but I just can't take his word for it. Sai stepped into hallway A. He didn't ask for the rooms Kate had entered and simply went ahead with looking through all of them. I couldn't blame him for suspecting Kate, and the rest of us felt the same. There was no complaint besides Kate's outraged look. After the smoky crystal room, Sai entered the storeroom. We expected him to silently move on to the next one again, but once he exited it, he directed his look at us and showed what he had between his hands. Upon processing the sight, we ran to him in a daze.
What? Was it in the storeroom?
Held in Sai's hands was the Sekimeiya. It was white, as being touched hadn't changed its color at all. Yes, I found it hidden behind a sofa. Without warning, he moved the object to make contact with my skin. It scared me a bit, but nothing happened. So it's not working now. Anyway, Kate, did you look through this room?
Yes.
Not only that, but it was the first one he entered.
That's true, I remember. But that's because it's the farthest room from this side. I was looking for a person, so I didn't look behind the sofa.
Yeah, because we all famously know no one could hide behind a sofa. It's just too small. What a convenient excuse.
You actually think I hid it? I couldn't have done that. We locked the cabinet.
Atsuki, was Kate the last person to exit the event room? He might have had a key. I don't know, but we all left very fast. I don't think he could have had the time. Someone stay here. This floor has been confirmed to be empty, but we need to check the event room while making sure that nobody can move between the floors. Alright, we'll stay behind. Can't we go too? Isla, enough, you all can go. You all can go. Let's see what happened. Erina and Isla stayed where they were. That had been the safest option so far, but that time staying in an uncertain spot such as the stairs was more dangerous than moving through a floor we deemed empty, something Erina must not have realized. Nonetheless, the rest of us agreed and curiously entered the event room once again.
It's really not here. How's that possible?
Raising the curtain revealed that the Sekime we'd left there a few minutes ago was gone. It shouldn't be, right? We made sure nobody was in the two hallways. That's why I said that the last person to exit must have already had it. Look, it's unlocked. Of course it is. Kate must have a key.
I already said that I don't have it. There's no way I could have unlocked this cabinet. Could he even have unlocked it if we had it? Did he enter this room again?
Not that I saw. When they were done, I went to the mechanical room, so he might have had his chance. Then, Erina would have brought it up though. I see, so he had an opportunity. But there's no way he did that, right? Our group was done quickly, so he could have appeared at any moment, and Erina would have had to keep this from us.
It's amusing to see that now you have to resort to this to keep suspecting me. Erina wouldn't lie to you.
Weren't we all liars a second ago? And what else makes sense? Did it disappear magically? Well, it made me teleport. Would it be that crazy to think that maybe it did? And it unlocked the cabinet too, right? Did the fucking Sekimeiya send the cabinet to the past when it wasn't unlocked and just stroll on out of it? I didn't discard the possibility of you traveling to the past purely because nothing else explained what had happened. This has a simple explanation. Kate did it. I know that you think he didn't have the time, but I don't care about that. I left this room when he was inside, so for all I know he could have easily done it, even if all of you are lying. Well, you're free to think that. I highly doubt it, though.
It seems that your reasoning has stopped being so influenced by Sai. That's good, Atsuki. Now put the Sekime in the cabinet at once. It hasn't changed colors yet.
Fine, there you go. Sai put it in the cabinet and closed the glass. It was a slightly funny sight after hearing him say that we wouldn't take it out again. Do we lock it? Why would we? Kate will be able to keep getting it out.
You can watch everything I do if you so desire. I will never get the Sekimeiya out of here.
You said that Naomi had the only key to open this cabinet, right?
The only one I'm aware of, yes.
But she's... The culprit must have her key.
We saw her unlocking the cabinet before the smoke appeared. If the culprit didn't take it, could anyone have picked it up from her dead body? Sai checked her pulse, isn't that right?
I did. Maybe you meant to say that the key was... maybe you mean to say that the key was by her neck?
No, but only you approached her.
That was after you killed her, though. It sounds to me like you had a much better opportunity. Sai couldn't have picked it up. I was paying attention. Thank God someone's competent enough. Nobody else checked her corpse after that, so the key must have already been gone.
Why don't we go see if we can find it?
Sure. Sai opened the hallway A door to indicate to Erina and Isla that we'd go check the other hallway. They're still there, so let's go see if we find the key. Opposite to the event room in hallway B was the room where we'd found Naomi, B4, the last time we hadn't looked through her body. Who wants to search for it? I'd do it, but I don't want to be suspected even more. Nobody volunteered. Being close to a corpse was already enough for us. Fine, I'll do it, but if I find it, don't suggest that I could have skillfully placed it in one of her pockets.
Go ahead already.
So I started feeling every pocket of Naomi's clothes. It didn't take long for him to find something. Here, these are keys.
You placed them there.
Yeah, this is the pocket where she had the cabinet key. So I was holding a keyring containing 3 keys, 2 big ones and a small one.
It's none of those. They wouldn't fit.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Do you know what these 3 open?
That one opens the door on the floor 2 staircase. Don't know about the other 2 though. So she doesn't have the key for the cabinet?
Let me keep looking. So I searched for the remaining pockets, but they were all empty. Seems not. The killer took the cabinet key after killing her, and, well, we know who that was. Kate looked at me while everyone else looked at him. Don't try it again, Kate. You must have killed Naomi and then unlocked the cabinet with her key. You've proved yourself to be quite stupid a few times, so you must have hidden the Sekime in a room you looked through, hoping we'd ignore it.
That's ridiculous. I have no reason to do that, let alone the time. It's baffling how you don't realize only Atsuki could have done this.
What now?
You killed Naomi, so naturally you got your hands on her key. Then while you were looking at hallway A from the lobby, you went to the event room. You unlocked the cabinet and left the Sekimeiya in a room I had searched in order to frame me. There's no other way.
Don't you know how risky that would be? You'd have been seen at any time.
Likewise, if you intend to blame me, you're implying I took the same risk. The difference is that Atsuki had a reason to move it, to frame me. If his plan succeeded, I would have been the main culprit. However, by hiding it, I wouldn't gain anything.
Neither of your motives are enough, and Atsuki would have been more likely to be seen with the Sekimeiya. You won't convince anyone.
Why don't we do a thorough search then? Let's search each other to see who has the key.
Of course not. Nobody would be dumb enough to keep it on themselves. I bet you already disposed of it in another one of the rooms you inspected. Even though he said that, I still showed my empty pockets. Atsuki doesn't have a motive. Please stop accusing him. There's so much blood, so this is where everything happened, and to do this to someone in front of a camera, you need to have a very strong reason. We need to find the person who did this to Naomi. They made that noise earlier. Look at Naomi's face. She must have been so scared and worried, and being afraid of this happening might even be why she hid from us. It's what you said, right, Akaro? That she looked very preoccupied when she appeared. She must have been innocent, and the real culprit took her life.
And why would they do that? It's true that she looked like the culprit, and that's why I still think she was. By killing her, that'd only be telling us that she was innocent.
Or involved in a way that's harmful for the culprit. We need to know what happened to her and find the real person behind it. We shouldn't leave her like this, though. She doesn't deserve to spend 11 more hours lying face up with that expression.
What? Do you want to cover it?
Isn't that what you do for corpses? We should prioritize maintaining the crime scene. I don't think so. She died in this room and cameras recorded it. There's nothing to preserve and we can give some dignity to her body. Her stance was understandable and nobody wanted to argue against it. It was possible I'd get in trouble for it, but I went ahead and detached a curtain from a cabinet and laid it over Naomi's body, covering the face that gave away how she'd spent her last moments. Thank you. I'm sure she would appreciate it.
I'm not sure that was a great idea, but now let's make sure to find the person behind this. Doesn't it feel like they're taunting us, making noise to let us know they're there and refusing to appear?
But even so, you wouldn't have had a chance to move the Sekimeiya.
Can we really be sure? Our priority should be to find them. I don't think any of us did this. There's a real culprit who murdered Naomi and is behind the Sekimeiya vanishing. Who knows what else will happen if we don't stop them immediately. I don't know how they did everything or how they weren't found, but we have to hurry. They're somewhere on a higher floor right now, so let's find them.
We left the room behind and with it Naomi's corpse, which lay under a beautiful red cloth. She had lost her life in the tower with us, and yet we knew nothing about her or the identity and intentions of her murderer. I was trying to not let it get the best of me, but my mind was all over the place. I couldn't allow anything to happen to me in Shiria, and the moment I'd instantaneously moved between places kept replaying in my head. We met up with Erina and Isla and summarized a few conclusions we've been able to draw. Once again, we had 5 floors to go through. Were we going to find anyone a second time? It must have been almost 11, implying that someone might have been able to remain unseen for 2 full hours. This is starting to get old, so let's be fast. This person only wants to hide from us, and they're also being recorded by cameras, so our only goal is to find them and question them. Since it couldn't have been any of us, splitting up won't matter. Everyone make sure a floor is empty and then stay somewhere outside the partitions. This way, a hiding culprit will only be able to escape by moving between floors, and they'll easily be spotted. After a few minutes, it'll be impossible not to have found them, so we'll all move back to this floor with that person in tow. I don't think this is needed at all. We went up the stairs following Akaro. If none of us was the culprit or had ulterior motives, then the plan would work. It was only slightly faster than moving up progressively, but it would be equally successful. Well, let's stay here then. Actually, never mind. This arrangement of yours is a great idea. After we checked that nobody was in the bathrooms, Erina and Isla were left behind on floor 2, free to enter the partitions. Sai said he'd inspect and wait on floor 3. I'll look through this one, and the rest of you keep going up. With Akaro staying on the 4th floor, Shira and I remained on the 5th. Kate was left with the last one, and he said that he'd make sure nobody could stay hiding there. We easily looked through our 3 sections. There was nobody there, so we stayed next to the elevator. We'll have to wait then. We can head downstairs whenever Kate comes back. We have to find someone this time, right? Someone must have been on the crystal floor when we heard that noise. I'd say so, unless they can make it to the attic. The only way we could miss them is if someone purposely covers for them. Are you tired? When did you wake up yesterday? Sometime in the afternoon. I'm okay though, just a bit hungry. Yeah, I'm the same. I'm glad I ate a bit before leaving. Do you not carry cereal bars with you anymore? You always used to have 1 or 2 in your purse. That was at school. I brought the ones I had when I came over, but I finished them off a few days ago. They might not let people take food into the tower anyway. Right, I didn't think about that. I was thinking that if we want to go find that old cabin, we could do it tomorrow. It hasn't snowed in a bit, so that should help us get there. It was pretty far. Are you sure it'll still be there? I don't think I remember how to get to it, and the place must have changed a lot since then. It wasn't that fragile of a cabin. I'm sure it held out against the weather, but maybe the door is buried in snow. We'll have to see. No, I thought of something earlier. Do you remember Danny? Danny? Danny the tiger. Oh, that stuffed thing? Yeah, of course. God, it's been forever. I haven't been able to find him in years. I just thought that maybe I left him in that cabin. You think so? You definitely brought him there a few times. Maybe I left something there too. Now I want to go even more. Kate didn't mention a cabin in his story, but I'd be very surprised if it was the same place. There are probably a few similar fields on that mountain. Yeah, I'd be happy if we could find him. I used to have him with me all the time. We'll need to be well rested then. I'm sure things here will slow down soon. We'll find the person who made that noise and be able to relax. There was a pretty big couch in the lobby, so we might be able to sleep there. She didn't reply. I was doing my best to be optimistic, but we had already failed to find anyone a few times, and the sight of Naomi's empty eyes must have been burned into her own. She dropped her shoulders, trying to loosen up, but her posture still looked completely rigid. Our arrangement was efficient, but if the hidden culprit had gone to the 6th floor, for example, Kate could act as if he'd found it empty. Due to the door to the attic, we couldn't prove he'd lied unless we had security footage. However, it seemed like Kate was serious about finding the culprit. If he hadn't been making that up, he would report his part of the search truthfully. As I thought of him, I heard muffled noises coming from above us. They were incredibly faint footsteps we could hear solely because of the pure silence surrounding us, which indicated that Kate was walking through the 6th floor. Do you think I could have time traveled? I don't know. It's not so easy to believe. Do you think you did? I think so. Having experienced it myself makes me doubt that anything else could have happened. I see. How was it? Did it hurt at all? Oh, no, it was immediate. Did I really disappear from your perspective? Yes, I thought I must have imagined it somehow, but my first impression was that you instantly vanished. I actually ran up to the cabinet thinking you might have fallen inside, but I could only see the grey Sekimeiya.
If anyone else had said that, I would have kept in mind the possibility of doubting them. It could have been a deliberate lie to make me think I teleported when they knew what had truly happened. But I had to take Shira's experience at face value. If I intended to think of an alternative to time travel, not only did I have to explain my own experience, but also hers. Another reason why I believed I might have time traveled was that it led me to understand why you didn't find anyone on the 6th floor earlier. You saw me next to the offices and thought I'd moved there, right?
Oh, that's right. When I got back, you were next to the elevator again. I was gonna bring it up, but you looked a bit nervous and I thought something might have happened. So you were the one who brought the elevator up?
It seems so. Traveling to the past had caused her to not find the person she'd been looking for, but it had required very specific circumstances. For our second search, everyone was watching over a floor, so it was unlikely something like that would repeat.
I'm sorry. If I hadn't brought up coming here, this wouldn't have happened.
You don't have to apologize for that. I wanted to come too.
Are you sure? Nothing has happened to us yet, but depending on what's really going on, we might be in danger, as someone is dead.
That'll be okay. That's fine. I feel horrible about what happened to Naomi, but it's likely she was involved with the plan in some way. There's no reason anyone would try to hurt us.
But we're searching for the culprit, right? That might be a motive. They killed Naomi in front of security cameras, so we won't be able to feel safe anywhere. And there's also this weird teleportation. Not only that, but a lot of things don't seem right, do they? How did the Sekimeiya disappear just now?
Well, the cabinet must have been opened with a key.
But nobody could have, and if someone did, it would mean it had to be one of us 7. Or I guess either Sai or Akuro. You were looking at hallway A, right?
That sounded reasonable from her point of view. She wouldn't have kept track of Sai and Akuro while she looked through the hallway B rooms.
Yes, but that's not really the case. Sai, Akuro, Kate, Erina, Isla, and an unknown person could have still done it. When I went to look inside the mechanical room, Kate, Erina, and Isla were looking at hallway A. During that time, they had the chance to enter the event room. It would imply though that they were either working together or threatened not to speak by the other. Similarly, if they didn't keep watching the hallway or were working with an unknown person, that person could have also had the opportunity to enter unseen. That sounds very unlikely though, and it means that they had Naomi's keys since before we found her body. But what you said about Sai and Akuro doesn't make much sense either, because the Sekimeiya was found in the storeroom in hallway A. Sai and Akuro were looking through hallway B, so they could have opened the cabinet by picking up the key from Naomi's body and then gone to the event room. But then they couldn't have left the Sekimeiya inside one of the hallway A rooms.
Yes, their only way to achieve that would have been by cooperating with Kate and Erina. When I was in the mechanical room, either of them could have entered the event room knowing that their hallway B companion had unlocked the cabinet, or maybe they let them hide it.
So in the end, the only possibilities are that either Kate and Erina are the culprits, worked with them, or were told to keep quiet. Nobody could have hidden it in the storeroom without being seen by both of them, and Isla too, I suppose.
That's right. And if it's true that no more keys exist and they weren't threatened, they must have been behind what happened to Naomi. They wouldn't have been able to unlock the cabinet otherwise, unless they cooperated with someone from hallway B. At least 3 people are lying to us, or nothing makes sense. That was the great conclusion we'd come to, and Shira looked pretty defeated.
But you said earlier that nobody from hallway B could have hidden the Sekimeiya in the storeroom. Could they have had a way around that?
I considered that it could have been Sai. He entered the storeroom and acted like he'd found the Sekimeiya inside, when in reality he had it on himself the whole time. That's the only way I can think of, but it's not really possible. Technically, Sai had a way to keep the Sekimeiya on himself without being seen, by putting it in his hip pack. However, we talked for a bit before he went to examine hallway A, and when he entered the 2 rooms, his back was facing us. I'm sure that if the Sekimeiya had been there, one of us would have noticed. It would have looked bulkier than normal.
You're probably right. You wouldn't have had another way to keep it hidden. So the only possibility is that Kate and Erina did it while you weren't there.
I think so. They must have had the key on themselves before we found Naomi, and only Kate could have killed her. However, Kate can't be the culprit alone, since he wouldn't have been able to get the Sekimeiya before I went to the mechanical room. At that point he was already with Erina and Isla.
When I left the mechanical room, Erina told me that nothing had happened. So again, either she was working with Kate or she was threatened to keep quiet. Nothing works involving someone from hallway B as the single culprit, and the only other possibility could be an extra person threatening Erina and Kate to keep quiet. You were with your group in hallway C when you finished, so it's unlikely that person came from a higher floor. They might have been in one of the investigated hallway A rooms. Someone else was definitely on that floor, right? So that shouldn't be a very unlikely possibility. That's true. And if they were threatened like that, they wouldn't reveal the culprit's position now, even if they found them. In fact, they might still be on the crystal floor. So maybe this arrangement wasn't the best idea? I can hardly take myself seriously, but I have to think about time travel and teleportation too. I just don't want to miss possibilities, and ones involving that what should be impossible have now become potential realities. I can't deny what I experienced. I have no idea what the rules would be, but if the Sekimeiya grants time travel abilities, it makes a lot of sense that someone's chasing after it or trying to accomplish something with it. This means that they could know more about its powers than we do. They might have been making use of them from the beginning. Something is still very strange, and that's the reason why anyone would hide the Sekimeiya. No matter what I think, there doesn't appear to be a clear purpose, since a simple search would almost always result in finding it if it's not brought to a locker or the attic. But let's assume the culprit wanted to hide it in a storeroom, ignoring the reasons. If they truly did it with the time travel that occurs upon touching the Sekimeiya, it follows that in the future they'll have access to it. Perhaps right now someone is ready to go to the past and hide it in the storeroom. Maybe their intention could be to make it out of here with the Sekimeiya in some way. It teleports you to the past, right? One goal could be to make it to the past holding the Sekimeiya itself or other gemstones. It would appear as if they disappeared from inside the tower and only one of us could be the culprit. Making it to the past with the Sekimeiya though sounds unlikely, as I wasn't holding it when I traveled to hallway A. Not being seen by the two hallway groups is more than possible if they use time travel. First they lured us out of the event room by making the sound we heard. Then they appeared inside the event room from the future. I don't know what could determine the position you teleport to, because I appeared in hallway A when I hadn't been there 20 minutes before, but if the culprit touched or will touch the Sekimeiya holding the cabinet key, they could appear inside the event room with it. Once we were all in hallway C, they got out of the event room and left it in the storeroom to then keep hiding. If they had already lived that portion of time, they could have known that they would be safe in the event room until we found the Sekimeiya. But it would also imply that they would have known it would quickly be found, giving little to no purpose to the whole ordeal. Regardless, that leaves open the possibility of the culprit still being on the crystal floor. They could have even disappeared by touching the Sekimeiya if it had been necessary, and even though it was white when we found it, maybe it didn't make us travel because someone had just used it. My initial thought is some sort of cooldown. After I traveled, nobody else could travel. Once the cold temperature restored it, it allowed for one more travel. That though still doesn't explain the strange color change it underwent right as I touched it. If we're chasing a culprit who has knowledge of how to disappear and go to the past easily, it makes a lot of sense that we haven't found them yet. It would also explain why they've been hiding from us when at first glance they had no chance of remaining unseen for very long. But the person who lured us out of the event room would have had to go up to the floors before traveling to the past. And they can't disappear from there so easily since the Sekimeiya is still on the crystal floor. Once again though, the attic makes it possible. Nonetheless, if no time travel or teleportation was involved at all in what happened, Kate, Erina and Isla know the truth of it. If it really was a factor, I wonder how far we are from uncovering what happened around us. Kate's coming. I anticipated his arrival thanks to the echoing footsteps. He came from the floor above. Did anything happen?
No, the floor was empty, so as we agreed, I stayed there for a while waiting for someone intending to escape to it with the elevator. More than enough time has passed though, so we should go back down.
He still looked at me angrily, but I tried to ignore it.
If anyone was around, they must have been found.
Okay, let's go to the crystal floor. We took the stairs down. Akuro was waiting for us, uncertain of what to do. He also hadn't found anyone. One floor below was Sai. According to him, the third floor had been empty and nothing had happened after we'd left. The case was the same on the second where Erina and Isla had remained. There was no point to it, but as we'd said earlier, we all moved down to the crystal floor. Well, Did anyone find the culprit and let them escape? Everyone stated that their floor had been empty. We just searched through the entire tower to find nobody, so the only remaining possibilities were that the culprit had access to the attic, that one of us was lying, or that they'd managed to escape by teleporting through time, which should have only been possible on the crystal floor. No? We all kept quiet as we'd already announced the results. They have to be in the attic then. We just searched every other floor after all. Oh, wait, I can actually think of another place where they could be. Are you sure? We looked through the whole tower and found it empty. The way we did it didn't allow for anyone to hide from us. Where else could they have been? There. And where that is what we'll find out in the next episode. For now, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys again next time. Till then, bye.